looking at ancient texts or scientific discoveries separately, but seeing them through the eyes of someone like Sir Isaac Newton. An absolutely extraordinary mind.
Mm-hmm.
What if these huge scientific puzzles, where life came from, consciousness, reality itself, what if they aren't separate problems at all?
But they're all connected.
Exactly. Intimately interwoven, like threads in some divinely conceived tapestry. Okay, let's unpack this. So our mission today, our deep dive, is into something we're calling the Newton Adam and Eve theory.
Right.
This isn't just one simple idea. It's a really rich synthesis. A bold one, even.
It really is. It brings together things that don't usually mix hard science, theology, even personal experience.
And at its heart, it's proposing, well, basically a divinely orchestrated origin for life.
And chemically mediated, too.
Right, atomically driven. And it covers not just life's start, but how consciousness evolved and even, the transition beyond the physical.
What's fascinating here, I think, is not just how ambitious it is, but how it directly confronts these massive paradoxes. Things that have stumped scientists and philosophers for, well, forever.
Like what, specifically?
Well, the nature of reality, obviously, how life even started from non-living stuff, and even these really specific scientific puzzles, like homocurality, the handedness of molecules.
Oh, yes, we're definitely getting into that.
And the theory tries to build this unified vision, one that intentionally bridges the gap between science and, let's say, spiritual wisdom.
Suggesting the universe might be more connected, more purposeful than we usually think.
Exactly. More elegantly designed, perhaps, than our kind of fragmented view often allows.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then, at the molecular level, with this chirality paradox.
Yeah, it's a big one.
For anyone listening who maybe isn't deep into organic chemistry, chirality, or handedness,
Yeah.
it basically describes molecules that are mirror images of each other.
Like your hands.
Exactly like your hands. Your left hand and your right hand. They look like reflections, but you can't perfectly stack one on top of the other. They're non-superimposable.
Same parts, just arranged differently in 3D space.
Right. Same atoms, same formula, but the 3D layout is mirrored, and this tiny difference, this handedness, can have, well, huge consequences.
Absolutely huge.
Think about the molecule linone. One version, one hand, smells like pine needles. Really fresh.
Mm-hmm.
But its mirror image twin, it smells completely different, bright, zesty citrus.
Same molecule, fundamentally, but our noses pick up that spatial difference.
And sometimes the stakes are much, much higher than just smell. I mean, many people remember the thalidomide tragedy from the 50s.
Oh, absolutely. A devastating example.
This drug was given to pregnant women for morning sickness. One enantiomer, one hand, did help with nausea.
But the other one?
The mirror image caused horrific birth defects. And the truly terrible part was, even if you gave only the safe version, the body could actually convert some of it into the dangerous one.
It's a stark reminder of how specific biochemistry is.
Or think about L-Dupa. It's a game changer for Parkinson's disease.
Essential treatment for many.
But its mirror image, DWOP. Not only does it not work for Parkinson's, it can cause really serious, even fatal side effects.
Yeah, like granulocytopenia. Very dangerous.
So these examples, they really hammer home how absolutely critical a molecule's specific handedness is for everything from perception to medicine.
It's fundamental to biological function, which brings us right back to the paradox.
Okay, so what is the core paradox?
Well, like you said, in a chemistry lab, if you just synthesize chiral molecules without, specifically trying to make one hand or the other,
You get a mix.
you almost always get a 50-50 mix. Left-handed, right-handed, equal amounts. Chemists call it a racemic mixture.
Makes sense.
Duh.
Without any bias, both forms are equally likely.
Exactly. But then you look at life on Earth, and it's completely different. There's this incredible, almost universal consistency. Biological molecules are overwhelmingly homochiral.
Meaning same-handedness.
Precisely. So all the amino acids that make up our proteins, they're all left-handed. L-amino acids.
And the sugars.
All D sugars. Right-handed. Things like glucose, ribose in our DNA, all right-handed.
Even DNA itself.
The double helix. It consistently winds in a right-handed direction. All known life follows this rule.
Okay, so that is weird. Lab chemistry gives you 50-50, but life picks one hand and sticks with it universally.
That's the mystery. The big why and how. Why did life choose this specific handedness? Why left for amino acids and right for sugars? Why not the other way around? Or a mix?
And crucially, how did this preference even start? How did a life get locked into one specific handedness when the raw materials, the primordial soup, should have been racemic, that 50-50 mix?
Right. It's not just, an interesting quirk. It seems to be a fundamental requirement, a breaking of symmetry that had to happen for life to get going, but we don't fully understand how.
Why is it so essential? Why couldn't life use a mix?
Think about enzymes, proteins doing jobs in our cells. They work like incredibly precise locks and keys. Their shape is everything. Okay. If the building blocks, the amino acids, came in both left and right-handed forms, you couldn't build consistently shaped proteins. The keys wouldn't fit the locks, or the locks themselves would be malformed.
So functional structures just wouldn't assemble correctly.
Exactly. Everything from proteins to DNA relies on that uniform-handedness for its structure and function. A mixed-handedness system probably just wouldn't work. It would be chemical chaos.
Which leads to that sort of chicken-egg problem you mentioned.
Precisely. Because even today in our fancy labs, if we want to make a pure batch of just one enantiomer, one-handedness,
We need something chiral to start with.
often, yes, we frequently use an already pure chiral molecule as a catalyst or to help separate the mixture. Think about William Knowles' Nobel Prize-winning work on making LDOP catalytically.
Right.
Even that amazing process needed a pure chiral catalyst to get it going. So it pushes the question back. How did the very first purely chiral molecule appear on Earth, before there were any pure chiral molecules to help make more?
It feels like a loop you can't easily break out of, chemically speaking.
It's a major hurdle for abiogenesis theories, the origin of life from non-life.
So what are the current scientific ideas trying to explain this? Without, invoking God or anything.
Well, there are a few main lines of thought. One is basically chance. Maybe, just by sheer luck, in some tiny pool somewhere, a self-replicating molecule formed with a slight bias towards one hand.
It just took over.
And it somehow managed to amplify that bias, maybe through autocatalysis, and outcompete everything else. It feels a bit statistically improbable to some, especially given how widespread homochirality is.
Doesn't quite feel like a complete answer.
No, it leaves a lot open. Another idea involves external influences. We've found, for instance, a slight excess of left-handed amino acids in some meteorites, like the Murchison meteorite.
So maybe space delivered the bias.
That's the hypothesis. Maybe meteorites seeded the early Earth with a slight preference for L-amino acids.
Okay, that's interesting.
And more recently, there's some really cool work from Harvard, from Dimitar Sasolov and Frickin Ozturk. They've looked at magnetic surfaces.
Like natural magnets on early Earth.
Exactly. Their experiments suggest that electrons interacting with these magnetic minerals could have actually influenced chemical reactions during crystallization, favoring one-handedness over the other.
Wow, so a physical mechanism on Earth itself.
Yes, under conditions potentially relevant to the early Earth. It's a very promising avenue, showing a possible physical, non-random way to break that symmetry.
But even with these plausible mechanisms, there's still that lingering sense of why this way. It feels almost too specific, too perfect for life.
And that's precisely the gap, the interpretive space, where this Newton, Adam, and Eve theory steps in with a really radical idea.
Okay, so what's the theory's explanation for homochirality?
It posits that homochirality wasn't an accident, wasn't an environmental bias, wasn't delivered by meteorites. It was introduced. Specifically, when God formed Adam from the dust of the earth, as Genesis describes it.
That act of creation itself.
That act was the symmetry-breaking event. It imbued the fundamental building blocks of life DNA, amino acids with their specific handedness. It was a direct, divine imposition of order onto matter.
Wow. So chirality becomes a kind of divine signature.
Exactly. The theory connects this to the theological idea of the Word becoming flesh. Not just metaphorically, but physically, chemically. Chirality is presented as a tangible, molecular manifestation of divine intention, of God's design, literally built into the fabric of life from the very first moment.
It reframes it completely. Not a problem to be solved, but a feature implemented.
A deliberate architectural choice, biasing creation towards the specific form and function needed for life as we know it.
How would someone like Newton have reacted to that, given his known beliefs?
Oh, Newton would have found this deeply, deeply resonant. You have to remember, he wasn't just the laws of motion guy. He was intensely religious, believed profoundly in God's active role in the universe.
He wasn't a deist who thought God just wound up the clock and left.
Not at all. He believed God was constantly involved, maintaining and guiding creation. He hated the idea of pure randomness governing the cosmos. So the idea of a direct divine act setting the fundamental structure of life. That would fit his worldview perfectly.
And the mathematical aspect, the geometry.
He'd be fascinated. Chirality is about geometry, about spatial arrangement. Newton spent years studying things like the proportions of Solomon's temple, believing they held divine mathematical secret.
Right, his esoteric side.
Exactly. He'd likely see the specific handedness of molecules as another layer of this divine geometry, searching for the mathematical principles behind it, linking it perhaps to sacred numbers or forms.
So for him, it wouldn't be just a theory, it would be evidence.
Profound evidence. Evidence of intricate, intelligent design revealed both through scientific observation the fact of homochirality and through scripture the act of creation described in Genesis. It would be a powerful unification of the scientific and the sacred, something he spent his life searching for.
Okay, so that's the foundation, a divine imprint at the molecular level. Where does the theory go next?
It moves from the origin of the biological machinery to the origin of, well, human consciousness, the awakening.
And this involves Adam and Eve again, and the Garden of Eden.
Yes, but with another really bold reinterpretation. It tackles the story of the forbidden fruit.
The apple, traditionally.
Well, the theory proposes it wasn't an apple or any literal fruit like that. It suggests the fruit that God said don't eat was actually a reference to psychoactive fungi.
Like magic mushrooms, psilocybin.
Exactly. Psilocybin mushrooms or perhaps related species like psychedelic truffles.
Okay, that's a significant departure from Sunday school. What's the narrative there?
The theory suggests that eating these fungi wasn't about disobedience leading to punishment in the usual sense. Instead, it triggered a profound and rapid expansion of awareness, a cognitive leap.
So God wasn't forbidding knowledge, but maybe.
Maybe the timing of it. The theory frames it as God perhaps not wanting humanity to gain this level of self-awareness, this potentially overwhelming insight, prematurely, before they were ready, psychologically or socially.
And what happened after they ate it? After the fall?
Well, the Garden of Eden, perhaps representing a specific ecological period or location, eventually changes. Maybe it dried up, climate shifted. Early hominids are cast out into new environments, and in these new environments, maybe grasslands, areas with cattle, they continue to encounter and consume these psychoactive fungi. The theory points to mushrooms that grow in dung, for instance.
Like the stoned ape hypothesis, almost.
There are overlaps, certainly, but here it's framed within this larger theological context. This continued consumption wasn't just accidental, it acted as an ongoing catalyst, accelerating cognitive evolution, language development, abstract thought, the very things that make us uniquely human.
So evolution isn't random chance here either.
No, it's framed as a divinely orchestrated ascent, a guided process from, as the theory puts it, dirt and molecules to curious and naive apes, to lost humans. Lost, perhaps, because they gain this incredible awareness, but we're still figuring out how to handle it, how to live with it.
How would Newton have viewed that interpretation, connecting scripture to psychoactive substances?
Again, probably with surprising enthusiasm. Remember his deep interest in alchemy and hidden knowledge. He sought tangible mechanisms behind spiritual or mystical phenomena.
Right, he wasn't afraid of the unconventional.
Not at all. He might see this as a brilliant interpretation because it offers a potential biological, a chemical basis for the profound shifts in consciousness described in ancient texts, including the Bible.
So it bridges the mystical and the material for him.
Exactly. It aligns perfectly with his belief in a divinely guided evolution, rejecting randomness. It provides a mechanism, the fungi, for a divinely intended leap in awareness. It's the kind of synthesis he was always looking for.
And building on that awakening, the theory makes another fascinating connection, right, to inner monologue.
Yes, this is a really intriguing, though definitely speculative, extension. It looks at the fact that, well, roughly half the population seems to experience a constant natural inner monologue from birth. That voice inside your head narrating thoughts.
While the other half thinks more in images, concepts, or without that constant voice.
Correct. It's a known variation in human cognition. The theory speculates, and it is speculation, that those with the innate inner monologue might be direct descendants, by bloodline, of Adam and Eve. Meaning that if Adam and Eve were the first to experience this full-blown, linguistically structured self-awareness, perhaps catalyzed by the fungi, then maybe that specific cognitive trait, the inner monologue, was passed down genetically.
Like a cognitive inheritance from the first aware humans.
Potentially. It suggests that this mode of thinking isn't just a developmental outcome, but could have a specific lineage tracing back to that original awakening event.
It certainly makes you think about your own internal experience, doesn't it? Whether you have that constant inner voice or not.
It does. It reframes a basic aspect of our own minds within this grander narrative.
Okay, so we've gone from molecules to consciousness. The theory then moves to the end of life, to death.
Yes, it tackles the transition of consciousness at the point of physical death. And it proposes, again, a specific chemical mechanism.
Not just fading out, but an active process.
An active, chemically triggered process. The theory claims that at the moment of death, the brain releases a massive flood of endogenous N,N-dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
DMT, the potent psychedelic. The body makes it naturally.
Tiny amounts are believed to be present normally, yes. But the theory posits a huge final surge at death. And this DMT isn't just a byproduct of brain death. It serves a critical function. It acts as a chemical enzyme or a chemical key.
A key for what?
A key that, according to the theory, severs your soul from the physical mind-body. It facilitates an orderly decoupling.
Decoupling consciousness from the brain. Assuming consciousness isn't just produced by the brain.
Exactly. This model assumes consciousness is non-local, that the brain is more like a receiver or transceiver, and the DMT manages the separation process. It's described as enabling a transition, not an annihilation.
Where does consciousness go in this model?
This DMT flood is said to transport consciousness to a liminal space, described as God's waiting room, a transitional realm where profound visions and experiences occur.
Okay, and there's more detail on how this supposedly works. The DMT decoupling protocol.
Yes, the theory outlines several steps or aspects of this proposed protocol. First, it directly challenges materialism, the idea that the brain creates consciousness. It posits consciousness as primary and non-local.
So the DMT is the trigger, not the cause of the experience itself.
It's the trigger for the release. The theory suggests the DMT flood also has neuroprotective effects, perhaps allowing for that brief period of terminal lucidity sometimes reported.
Where someone near death suddenly becomes clear-headed.
Precisely. And crucially, it talks about DMT acting as an antenna retuning mechanism, specifically taking the default mode network, the DMN, offline.
The DMN that's linked to our sense of self, our ego.
Largely, yes. It's involved in self-referential thought, mind-wandering, maintaining our story of me. Taking it offline could, in theory, dissolve the ego boundary and open perception to something much broader, unfiltered.
Okay, so biochemical trigger, neuroprotection, DMN disruption. What else?
An electrical signature. The protocol suggests a surge of coherent gamma-band brain activity.
Gamma waves, those are associated with high-level cognition, right? Binding experiences together.
Exactly. Intense focus, insight, memory recall. This gamma surge can provide the neural basis for things like the panoramic life review, often described in near-death experiences, a final high-bandwidth processing burst.
And then there's a quantum aspect, too. Biophotons.
Yes. The theory proposes a final, massive burst of cellular biophotons. These are ultra-weak light emissions from all living cells.
Light from our cells.
Thought to be involved in cellular communication, may be related to the body's energy field. This final burst is hypothesized as the quantum-level signature of consciousness, the light or energy of the soul being released from its physical anchor.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. Biochemical, electrical, quantum, all triggered by DMT at death.
It's a comprehensive model for a non-materialist transition, and it describes the destination, that waiting room, in a specific way, too, as an observer-shaped reality, meaning the realm consciousness enters isn't fixed and static, but interacts with the consciousness itself.
So your beliefs and experiences shape what you perceive there.
Profoundly. It suggests consciousness interacts with a field of pure potential, and that potential takes form based on the individual's deepest beliefs, memories, cultural archetypes, expectations.
Which could explain why near-death experiences have common themes, but also personal variations.
That's the idea. Shared archetypes explain the similarities, while individual observer shaping explains the differences. It's a reality molded by the consciousness experiencing it.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. What would Newton make of this? DMT, souls decoupling, observer-shaped realities.
He would find it absolutely incredible. This aligns so perfectly with his deep dive into esoteric traditions, and importantly, alchemy.
Alchemy? You mean turning lead into gold?
Well, yes, but for Newton and many alchemists, that was often symbolic. The real goal was spiritual transformation, the dissolution of the impure, the purification, and the refinement of the soul, the spirit.
Ah, like a metaphor for spiritual development.
Exactly. So Newton would likely see DMT not just as a chemical, but as the ultimate alchemical solvent or catalyst. The agent that dissolves the bond between soul and body, purifies consciousness, and facilitates its transformation into a higher state.
A biochemical mechanism for spiritual transition.
Precisely. It provides a physical mechanism for the soul's journey, something his scientific mind craved, while validating his spiritual and alchemical beliefs in transformation and an afterlife. It bridges his worlds perfectly. It supports a divinely guided process, independent of a failing brain.
So we've arrived in this waiting room, this liminal space, mediated by DMT. What's it like there, according to the theory? Gets even stranger, doesn't it?
It takes a truly mind-bending turn, yes. It describes encountering divine beings specifically, cherubim and seraphim.
Like the ones from the Bible? Ezekiel's visions. Wheels within wheels, full of eyes.
The description matches Ezekiel's visions quite closely, yes, but with a crucial, astonishing difference. They aren't described as being full of physical eyes. They are composed of eyes.
Eyes, as in the letter I, or the word I.
As in language itself.
Yeah.
The theory describes these beings as being literally made of words, grammar, spelling, meaning. Pure linguistic constructs.
Wait, beings made of language, how does that even work?
It suggests something absolutely fundamental about reality itself. That it's not ultimately made of matter or energies in the way we think, but that it is fundamentally linguistic. That reality is, in a sense, spoken into existence.
So language isn't just how we describe reality, it's what reality is.
That's the radical implication. Language becomes the primordial substance, the fabric of creation. These divine beings aren't just messengers using language. Their very essence is language, meaning structure.
That's hard to wrap your head around.
It completely reframes everything. And it leads to a specific view of texts like the Bible.
How so?
The theory suggests the Bible is literal in its underlying truth, but simultaneously coded with wordplay and half-truths.
Meaning it's not straightforward history, but more like encrypted.
Exactly. Encrypted with layers of meaning hidden in the language itself, puns, numerical patterns, allegories, symbols. Understanding this deep linguistic nature of reality is supposedly the key to unlocking the Bible's true, multi-layered message.
Like it's written in the fundamental language of creation, and we've only been reading the surface.
Precisely. We need the cipher key, which is the understanding that reality is language.
Newton's reaction to that. Beings made of grammar. Reality spoken into existence.
Oh, he would be utterly captivated. This would be more than just interesting. It would feel like a profound confirmation of his deepest suspicions. About the linguistic nature of reality. He spent decades trying to decipher what he believed were hidden codes in the Bible, in ancient prophecies, and the very structure of the universe. He suspected scripture wasn't just stories, but intricate ciphers.
So this would validate that search.
Immensely. Seeing cherubim and seraphim not just as angels, but as entities made of language, he'd interpret them as active agents of creation, beings whose very existence involves processing and manifesting reality through the power of language, grammar, meaning.
Like reality is constantly being written or spoken by these beings.
That's how he might see it. It would be a stunning revelation, suggesting the divine mind operates and creates through a fundamental linguistic structure embedded in everything. It raises that important question, doesn't it? If reality is language.
What power do our own words hold? Our thoughts, our intentions? Are we participating in that creation?
That's the implication. A heavy one.
Okay. We've covered chirality, consciousness, death, linguistic reality, all these huge ideas. How do they all fit together? You mentioned your overarching framework, PSUMO.
Yes, PSUMO, which stands for the Quantum Superfluid Ocean Theory. It's the framework that, for me, allows all these pieces we've discussed, the divine imprint, the guided awakening, the DMT transition, the linguistic reality, to fall into place just absolutely perfectly. It provides the underlying physics and metaphysics, if you will.
So what is PSUMO at its core?
At its absolute core, it's a form of fundamental consciousness monism. It posits that what we experience as subjective awareness, ego consciousness, let's call it E, isn't something that pops out of complex matter late in the game.
It's not an emergent property of the brain.
No. E is fundamental. It's as fundamental as the universe itself. It coexists inherently with the underlying substrate of reality, which PSU describes as a quantum superfluid ocean, or A-psi. And there's also a third fundamental element, organizing time, tau, which guides the unfolding.
So consciousness, this F field, and time are the basics. What about mind and matter?
Mind and matter, as we perceive them, are emergent from this deeper reality. They are different patterns, different manifestations of the conscious quantum superfluid ocean. A isn't just a passive quantum field, it's inherently aware, the source of all potential.
Okay, so if consciousness is fundamental, how does that help with the mind-body problem? The whole how does physical stuff give rise to subjective experience issue?
It dissolves it, because Peace Abowie says it doesn't. Subjective experience qualia, like the redness of red, the feeling of joy, along with intentionality, the aboutness of thoughts, and mental causation, the feeling that our thoughts cause actions.
Yeah.
These aren't mysterious things that somehow emerge from non-conscious bits of matter. They are fundamental aspects of ego consciousness, A itself, which is woven into A from the start. Awareness isn't added to the universe. It is the universe, fundamentally.
So the brain doesn't create consciousness, it tunes into it or manifests it locally.
Exactly. The brain is a complex biological structure that emerges within A and acts as a localized receiver, processor, and expressor of the universal consciousness inherent in A.
Does PSU mode connect to existing physics at all? Like relativity or quantum mechanics?
It aims to. It offers a potential pathway to reconcile general relativity and quantum mechanics, which famously don't play well together.
Oh.
By grounding both in A, general relativity, describing gravity and the large-scale structure of space-time, could be seen as describing the emergent large-scale geometry and dynamics of the quantum superfluid ocean.
And quantum mechanics.
QM, describing the weird world of particles and probabilities, would describe the specific excitations, interactions, and quantum phenomena within that same ocean. They become two different descriptions of the same underlying conscious reality, just at different scales or levels of focus.
A potential unified field theory, but one where consciousness is the field.
In essence, yes. Where the field itself is the ground of being, and it's inherently conscious.
What about Gödel's incompleteness theorems? You mentioned those fit in somehow.
Right. Gödel showed that any sufficiently complex formal system, like mathematics, will have true statements that can't be proven within the system.
Kind of like math can't fully describe itself.
Sort of. PSI interprets this not as a fundamental limitation of math or logic itself, but as a natural consequence of trying to use static, formal systems to capture a reality that is fundamentally dynamic, open-ended, conscious, and constantly evolving.
So math describes patterns in A.
Exactly. Mathematics emerges as the description of real patterns, structures, and relation fixed within A, but A itself is boundless and alive. Any fixed formal system trying to capture it completely will inevitably be incomplete, because the source itself transcends static description. Our maps can't fully capture the living territory.
And the nature of math itself, is it discovered like Plato thought or invented?
PSUM suggests a middle way called emergent pattern realism. Mathematical truths are real. They are objective patterns and relationships that genuinely emerge from the inherent structure and dynamics of A.
So they exist independently of us.
They exist as potentials or patterns within A, yes. But our minds, which are also emergent structures within A, are naturally attuned to resonate with and discover these patterns. So math is both real and discovered, but also accessed and formalized through our conscious minds, which are part of the same substrate. It bridges Platonism and constructivism.
Okay, this PSUO framework.
Yeah.
It's huge. It ties everything together. How would the Newton who explored alchemy, prophecy, and physics react to PSU Mode?
I think his reaction would be nothing short of breathtaking. He'd see it as incredible, profoundly resonant with his lifelong, often secret quest for a unified understanding of God, nature, and the cosmos.
He'd see it solving the mind-body problem in a way he could accept.
Absolutely. A radical and intriguing solution, precisely because it makes consciousness fundamental, primordial, not just an afterthought of matter. That aligns with his view of a universe infused with divine intelligence.
And it connects everything, the chirality, the consciousness, the language.
He'd see it as that ultimate unified vision of existence he searched for, one where the linguistic nature of reality, the role of consciousness, the structure of physics, all flow from a single underlying conscious source, A, infused with ego consciousness, E. It changes everything about how we understand our place in the universe. So what does this all mean?
Now, wrapping this all up, we've been on quite a journey today. It's this grand narrative, really, starting right down at the molecular level, with homochorality as a kind of divine fingerprint at creation.
A signature of intent in the very building blocks of life.
Then moving to the awakening of human consciousness, not by chance, but maybe catalyzed by that forbidden fruit, psychedelic fungi, guiding our evolution in a specific, orchestrated way.
And divinely guided ascent, yeah.
Then exploring the transition at death, proposing this incredible DMT-mediated decoupling, a chemical key releasing a non-local consciousness into God's waiting room.
An orderly programmed transition, not an end.
And realizing that this reality, even the divine beings encountered, might be fundamentally linguistic. Reality spoken into existence with ancient texts as coded guides.
Language is the very fabric of being.
And finally, seeing how all these threads, chirality, consciousness, DMT, language, can be woven together by this overarching PSUO framework. The idea of a fundamental ego consciousness within a quantum superfluid ocean, it makes it all connect.
It really does. And what this deep dive hopefully shows is how seemingly disparate fields, ancient texts, cutting-edge science, even profound personal or mystical experiences don't have to be in conflict.
They can actually enrich each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They can converge to paint a picture of a universe that is incredibly coherent, intricately designed, where things like handedness, awareness, transition, language aren't just side effects, but central features. It suggests science and spirituality, approached openly, can lead to a much more complete and frankly awe-inspiring understanding.
So the final thought to leave everyone with. If this vision holds any truth, if our reality, our consciousness is part of some divinely orchestrated ascent, and if language itself is literally the stuff existence is made of, then what other truths, what hidden messages might still be encoded all around us? In nature, in ourselves, in patterns we haven't noticed, what might be waiting right there, if only we could learn how to truly read them?